A loud smack echoed through the school hallway as Ava's cheek turned red from the slap. Her books scattered across the floor. Brett, the tall white boy with a smirk on his face, stood over her. "This is our school, Blackie," he hissed. "You don't belong here." He grabbed one of her braids and yanked it hard. "Go back to the jungle you came from." A group of white students laughed behind him. One of them took out his phone and started recording. Not one teacher in sight. Not one student stopped him. They all just watched. But what Brett didn't know, what no one in that racist little town knew, was that Ava's father wasn't just some regular black man. Her father was Commander Elijah Brooks, Delta Force, trained in silence and survival, a man who had rescued hostages in foreign lands and taken down terrorists with his bare hands, and his baby girl had just been attacked. 2 weeks earlier, Ava had moved to Willow Springs with her dad. She didn't want to. She liked the city. She liked her old friends, her school, the music, the food, but her dad said they needed a fresh start. "Someplace quiet," he told her, "where no one knows me." Ava had no idea why. The first day she walked into Willow Springs Middle School, the stares started. Not curious stares, mean stares. Whispers followed her down the hall like ghosts. "Why is she here? She probably steals. Her hair looks like a mop." Ava kept walking. Her skin was deep brown, her braids neat, her shoes clean. She spoke softly and never caused trouble. But in Willow Springs, that didn't matter. The color of her skin was already a crime. One day in class, Brett leaned over and whispered, "You stink like fried chicken." She said nothing. That made him angry. But nothing prepared her for what happened after school that Thursday afternoon. As she opened her locker, Brett appeared behind her. He shoved her hard against it. She fell, hitting her knee. "Let me teach you what happens when your kind tries to act equal," he growled. That's when the metal door to the school office slammed open, and Commander Elijah Brooks walked in. The air changed the moment Commander Elijah Brooks stepped through that door. He wasn't wearing a uniform, but he didn't need one. His presence alone sucked the noise out of the hallway like a vacuum. 6'3", broad-shouldered, jet-black skin that glistened under the fluorescent lights, and eyes that burned like fire through sunglasses he hadn't even removed yet. His fists were clenched, his jaw locked. Ava looked up from the ground, her lip bleeding, and whispered through her tears, "Daddy." Brett froze. His friends stopped laughing. One of them even dropped his phone. Elijah's boots echoed with power as he walked, stalked, towards Brett. The boy backed up, suddenly looking very small. I didn't do nothing," Brett stammered, voice shaking. But Ava's father didn't respond. He didn't need to. His face said everything. A white female teacher finally came running down the hall. "Sir, you can't be in here," she yelled. But when she saw Elijah's face and Ava on the floor, her voice cracked. "We're handling it." "No, ma'am," Elijah said slowly, removing his sunglasses and looking her dead in the eye. "You've been ignoring it." The hallway went quiet again. Some students peeked from behind lockers. Others started to film. Ava wiped her tears, trying to sit up. But her dad was already kneeling beside her, checking her bruised cheek and busted lip. "Baby girl," he said softly, voice filled with pain and steel. "Who did this?" She looked at Brett. Elijah stood up and faced him. "What's your name, boy?" Brett was sweating now. Brett, I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you did," Elijah said calmly but dangerously. "You've been doing it for weeks, haven't you? You think you can beat on her because she's black, and you're not." Brett stood behind her again, smirking like the devil himself. "Oops," he said, fake concern in his voice. Must have slipped. Too much fried chicken grease on her fingers. Someone yelled, "Should have stayed on the plantation." Ava stood up slowly, her legs trembling, her clothes soaked. Her hands clenched into fists, but she didn't hit back. She just stared at Brett. His blue eyes twinkled with hate. "You think your daddy scares me?" he whispered. "He can't protect you forever." Suddenly, Ava leaned in, eyes locked with his. "Try me," she whispered back. Then she walked away, straight to the front office, her skirt stained, her pride intact. But as she pushed open the door, she stopped short. Her father was already there. Commander Elijah Brooks was sitting across from Principal Howard, calm but sharp, like a lion waiting for a reason to roar. Ava stepped in. Principal Howard's face paled. "Oh, Ava," he stammered. We were just—" Elijah stood. "I came to ask about the investigation," he said slowly, with heavy sarcasm. "But something tells me I already know the answer." Ava didn't speak. She just handed her father the racist note from her locker and pointed to her food-stained skirt. Elijah looked down at it, then back at the principal. His voice dropped to a dangerous level. "This school is about to learn what happens when you corner a warrior's daughter." Principal Howard swallowed hard. "Mr. Brooks, please, let's not escalate." "No," Elijah cut in. "It's already escalated. You let it. You fed it. Now you'll answer for it." Ava stared at her father, and then something neither of them expected happened. The front office door opened again, and in walked two white parents. Brett's mom and dad. The mother was thin-lipped and red-faced. The father wore a sheriff's badge and a cowboy hat. "Well, well," the sheriff sneered. "So this is the hero father of the troublemaker." Elijah turned slowly. "And you are?" "I'm Sheriff Carter. My boy says your daughter started all this." Ava gasped. "He attacked me!" The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "You people always play victim. She's been stirring up trouble since day one." Elijah's face didn't move, but Ava saw it, that flicker, that moment of pain. He looked at her, then back at the sheriff, and took one step forward. "You just made this personal," Elijah said. And at that moment, Ava understood something. Her fight wasn't just against bullies. It was against a system built to break her. But they picked the wrong family. And war had just been declared. The news spread faster than wildfire. Black girl brings Delta Force daddy to threaten white kids. Sheriff's son attacked. Violent black father intimidates school staff. By the next morning, Ava's face was all over local Facebook groups. Moms who'd never met her posted about how they felt unsafe. Dads in pickup trucks talked about protecting their own. Church folks whispered her name like it was poison, and none of them cared about the truth. They didn't post the video of Brett slapping her. They didn't mention the racist notes, the spilled food, the bruises, or the slurs. They didn't say how the school ignored her cries, because Ava wasn't seen as a victim. She was a threat. A dark-skinned girl with pride, power, and a father who didn't bow to their badge or their Bible. At school, things got worse. In the hallway, kids wore shirts with Brett's face on them, under bold letters, "Stand with Brett." One white boy even leaned against her locker and hissed, "Should have been aborted." Ava flinched, but kept her mouth shut. Not because she was scared. She was tired. She walked into class, and there it was, written in black marker on the whiteboard. "One monkey ruined our school." The teacher hadn't erased it. She had circled it and written under it, "Discussion topic." Ava stared at it in disbelief. She looked around. No one seemed surprised. This was their world, and she was just a shadow in it. After school, Ava waited by the flagpole. Her father was late. That's when Kyle and two other white boys came up behind her. "You think you're better than us now? Because your dad's some army freak?" Ava didn't answer. Kyle pulled something from his backpack. "A banana?" He peeled it slow, like a joke. "Here, you must be hungry." Ava knocked it from his hand. "Get away from me." He shoved her. "Don't touch me, gorilla." She stumbled back. That's when a black SUV swerved into the parking lot, tires screeching. Elijah jumped out before it even stopped moving. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He walked up to Kyle and looked him dead in the eyes. "You ever put your hands on my daughter again, and I'll show you what real fear looks like." Kyle scoffed, but his eyes darted to Elijah's Delta Force tattoo, visible under his sleeve. "I'll call the cops," Kyle muttered. "Go ahead," Elijah said. "Call your daddy. Let's see who they come for when the cameras roll this time." That night, Elijah and Ava sat on the back porch in silence. Crickets chirped. The stars blinked above. Elijah finally broke the silence. "I thought moving here would give us peace," he said. Ava hugged her knees. "I thought being quiet would make them leave me alone." "They don't want quiet," Elijah said. "They want obedience." She looked at him. "Then why not let me leave? Why not just pull me out of that school?" He sighed. "Because if we run now, they win. And we've been running for 400 years. Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm not as strong as you, Daddy." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger. You've survived this without weapons, without backup, without armor. That takes a kind of courage I never learned in combat." The next morning, Ava walked into school again. Head high, fear buried deep. But it didn't take long for the next attack. This time, it was her locker, covered in red paint. "Go back to Africa." They even smeared it on her textbooks. And hanging from the handle, a rope tied into a noose. The school called it a prank. Ava called it a warning, but her father called it war. That same day, Elijah went straight to the school board. He walked in during a live meeting and laid down everything: videos, photos, recordings. He named names. He exposed teachers. He read the slurs out loud until white parents squirmed in their seats. "You think this is uncomfortable to hear?" he said. "Try living it." The board said they would investigate. But that night, their house was egged. Someone threw a rock through their window and spray-painted the garage door with the N-word. Ava sat on her bed, staring at it through the broken glass. Her hands shook. Her heart pounded, but she didn't cry, because tears were too soft for this fight. And then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Better watch your back. This town was built for us, not you." She showed it to her dad. He read it, then nodded once. "Pack a bag," he said. "Why?" she asked. "We're going back to that school tomorrow," he said, voice low and deadly. "But this time, I'm not walking in as a father." He looked her dead in the eyes. "I'm walking in as a soldier." The next morning, Ava's heart beat like a drum in her chest. Not from fear, from fire. She stood in front of the mirror, brushing her braids back into a tight ponytail. Her face was bruised, but her eyes were full of something new. Something passed down from every black woman who had ever been mocked, pushed, beaten, ignored, but still refused to break. Her father, Commander Elijah Brooks, stood in the kitchen loading his briefcase. But it wasn't filled with papers. It held flash drives, photos, military contacts, and federal law files. This time, he wasn't walking into that school as Ava's dad. He was walking in as a man who'd taken down warlords, and now his mission was a public school in the deep, racist heart of America. Ava wore all black. So did he. When they arrived at Willow Springs Middle School, students stared. Teachers paused. The principal, Mr. Howard, rushed out the front door like he had seen a ghost. "Mr. Brooks, let's not cause any more trouble." Elijah didn't even stop walking. He pushed right past, straight to the auditorium. That's where the emergency school culture meeting was happening. Parents, teachers, students, school board members, even the sheriff was there. Sitting beside Brett, who wore a fake black eye and a smug grin, Ava followed her father down the aisle in silence. Everyone watched them. Elijah stepped onto the stage and turned to the crowd. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Good morning," he began. "My name is Commander Elijah Brooks. I served 21 years in Delta Force. I've been in combat zones all over the world. I've seen cruelty from war criminals, terrorists, and dictators, but never, not once, have I seen anything as hateful, as gutless, and as disgusting as what my daughter has endured in your school." The room tensed. Whispers swirled. He held up photos. "This is my daughter's locker after she reported racist bullying." Click. The screen showed the red paint. "Go back to Africa." The noose. The banana peel. Gasps filled the room. He clicked again. "These are screenshots of messages sent to her phone. Should have been hung with the rest. You people ruin everything." The silence turned cold. "This is video footage of your precious Brett," Elijah said, glaring at the sheriff. "Harassing, threatening, and assaulting my daughter." The sheriff stood up, red-faced. "Now hold on." "Sit down," Elijah snapped. His voice cracked like thunder. "You raised a coward, and now you want to hide behind your badge." The room went still. Ava looked around. Some white parents looked embarrassed. Others, angry. A few crossed their arms, eyes full of hate. "Let's get something clear," Elijah continued. "This isn't just bullying. This is racism. Systemic, generational, and normalized. You knew what was happening. You let it happen. You watched a black girl get called a monkey, a slave, a mistake. And you did nothing." He paused, then stepped closer to the microphone. "And now that her father is standing here, you're all pretending to care?" One woman stood up. "Maybe if your daughter didn't act like she was better than everyone," Elijah interrupted. "She walks with pride, not arrogance. That scares people who think black girls should shrink." Another man shouted from the back, "We're not all racist." Elijah nodded. "Then where were you? When they threw food at her? When they put bananas in her locker? When they painted slurs on the school walls? Silence in the face of racism is racism. You don't get to stay neutral when the fire is burning someone alive." Brett, seated with crossed arms, muttered under his breath, "Just send them back to the hood." Ava heard it, loud and clear. So did Elijah. He turned and pointed at Brett. "You think you're strong? You're a scared little boy hiding behind whiteness. And let me tell you something, son. This country was built on the backs of people who look like my daughter. People who bled and died for rights they still don't fully have." The room was breathless. Your school failed. Your staff failed. Your community failed. But my daughter didn't. She stood in the middle of your hate, and she didn't break. And now I'm standing here to tell you." He pulled out a document and slammed it on the podium. "This is a federal complaint. Racial harassment. Failure to protect. Title VI violation. I've contacted the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. There will be investigations, lawsuits, National coverage, "Your silence ends today." The room exploded in noise, parents yelling, teachers scrambling. Principal Howard's face was ghost white. Elijah took Ava's hand and walked off the stage. Outside, she looked up at him. "What now?" He smiled softly. "Now we watch them burn under the light they tried to hide from." As they walked to the car, someone threw a rock. It missed, but it shattered the school's front window. On the wall next to it, someone had spray-painted new words overnight. "Black's out." Ava turned to look at it, then at her father. "I'm not scared anymore," she said. Elijah looked back at the shattered glass and the hateful message. "Good," he said, "because now they should be." The next day, the white folks of Willow Springs acted like they were the victims. Everywhere Ava went, she heard whispers, not of guilt, not of shame, but of rage. "They're ruining our town. That man came in here like he owns the place. Why's she still here?" Even the grocery store became a battlefield. As Ava and Elijah walked down the cereal aisle, a woman clutching her child pulled him away like Ava was disease. "Don't look at her, baby," she whispered. "That's the girl who caused all the trouble." Trouble. That's what they called it. Not racism. Not terror. Not years of silent abuse. Just trouble. By the end of the week, Elijah's face was all over the local news, twisted stories, and edited footage painting him as a militant black man who stormed into a peaceful school to intimidate the community. A fake version of what happened went viral. It showed Brett's bruised face with dramatic music, but none of Ava's pain, none of the slurs, none of the noose. Reporters called their house at night. Strangers left voicemails filled with hate. Some even came to their door, knocking hard, shouting, "Go back where you came from." They didn't mean another state. They meant another continent. Ava stayed home for 2 days. She needed a break, but something in her spirit refused to hide forever. On the 3rd day, she put on her jacket, tied her braids back, and looked at her dad. "I'm going back." Elijah nodded. "Then I'm going with you." When they walked into school, the air shifted. The noise in the hallway dropped to a hush. Students parted like the sea, not out of respect, out of hate. Ava passed a wall where flyers were posted. White fists, American flags, and bold black letters, "Keep our schools clean." The fine print below read, "No more outside agitators. No more special treatment. No more lies." It was clear what they meant. No more black. Ava walked into her first class. Mr. Stanley didn't even look at her. "You're late," he said coldly. "I had rocks thrown at my house last night," she said. "You want to mark that tardy, too?" Some kids laughed. Not kindly, mockingly. Kyle, the boy who once offered her a banana, leaned over and whispered, "You people love playing victim. Maybe your dad should teach you how to dodge bricks instead of bullets." Ava didn't flinch. She just stared at him. "Maybe your daddy should teach you how to be a man instead of a racist coward." The class went dead silent. Kyle's face turned red. His mouth twisted. He spat the word under his breath, the one that cut deepest. It was the last straw. Ava stood up. Her chair screeched back. Mr. Stanley shouted, "Ava, sit down!" "No," she said. Then she turned to the class. "You want me to be silent? You want me to smile through your slurs and just act normal? You want me to pretend this school didn't hang a noose on my locker and spray paint my driveway? I'm not pretending anymore. I'm not apologizing for who I am." She pointed at Kyle. "You can call me whatever you want, but I know who I am. I'm black. I'm proud. And you don't get to silence me just because Our skin's lighter, Mr. Stanley yelled. Get out of this classroom. I'm not the one who should leave, Ava said. He should. That's when Elijah walked in. He had been waiting in the hallway, just in case. He heard everything, and this time he wasn't holding back. He walked straight to the front of the room, pulled out a folder, and handed it to Mr. Stanley. That's a formal civil rights complaint. The Department of Education is watching now. Every word, every act, every face. Mr. Stanley looked at it, hands shaking. And you, Elijah said, pointing at Kyle. You think calling my daughter that word makes you powerful? That word came from chains and blood and cotton fields. You say it because you think it still means ownership, but it doesn't. It means fear. Your fear. Kyle shrank into his seat. But Elijah didn't stop. You're scared because she walks taller than you ever could. You're scared because she won't break. And deep down, you know, this country owes her everything. The classroom was still. Then Ava stepped beside her father. And one day, she said, people like you will be history lessons, ugly ones. They walked out together, down the hallway filled with stares and silence. As they stepped outside, a group of white students stood by the flagpole, waving an American flag. One of them shouted, "You don't belong here!" But another voice rang out, soft, shaky. From behind, a black boy in the 6th grade. He stepped forward, skinny, nervous, clutching his backpack. "I do," he said. "I belong here too." Then another girl stepped forward, and another. 3 black students, then 4, then 7, until Ava turned around and saw them standing behind her. Her army. She smiled, because the moment she stopped walking alone, she knew. They hadn't just come to break her. They'd awakened a movement. The next morning, someone burned a cross on the school lawn. Black smoke filled the air. The fire hissed and spit, blackening the grass like poison. Ava saw it before she even stepped off the bus. Her stomach dropped. The smell of gasoline still lingered. Students gathered around it, laughing, filming. One white boy posed beside the flames and threw up a Confederate flag behind his back like it was a joke. Ava froze. Her legs refused to move. Tears burned behind her eyes but didn't fall. She had heard about cross burnings in history books. Her father had told her stories, terrible stories, about what they meant. What they really meant. "This isn't about school anymore," she whispered. It was about hate. Raw. Ancient. Alive. Principal Howard stood off to the side, trying to look concerned but too cowardly to stop it. Teachers whispered but made no announcements. The fire burned for 10 full minutes before someone finally tossed water on it. No alarms, no punishment, no justice. Just smoke and silence. Elijah arrived 10 minutes later, face stone cold. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He took photos, called the FBI himself, and stood beside Ava without saying a word. His silence said more than shouting ever could. When they walked inside the school building, Ava's locker had been covered again. This time with spray paint that read, "You can't whitewash a NR." The N was big, ugly, dripping red like blood. Ava didn't even flinch this time. She took out her phone and took a picture. Then she opened her locker, grabbed her books, and went to class like it was just another Tuesday. But the weight inside her heart grew heavier. In math class, the teacher ignored her completely. When she raised her hand, he looked right through her. When Kyle answered a question wrong, the teacher laughed and said, "Well, at least you're not trying to play victim." The class laughed. Ava didn't. When she went to the cafeteria, her usual table had been flipped over. Her tray was missing. When she asked the lunch lady, the woman white, with a greasy ponytail and hate in her eyes, snapped, "I don't serve animals." The line went silent. Ava looked around. Not one student spoke up. Not one teacher moved. She walked away, stomach growling, head high. But inside, her heart was shattering. She went to the bathroom and locked herself in the last stall. She sat on the closed toilet seat and let the silence close around her. Then she finally cried. Hot, silent tears that rolled down her cheeks and landed on her jeans. She cried for her father, who had given everything to a country that treated his daughter like trash. She cried for her mother, who died when Ava was 6 and never got to protect her from this. She cried for every black girl who ever had to swallow her rage, bite her tongue, and pretend it didn't hurt. Then she heard a voice outside the stall. "Monkey's crying," Kyle's girlfriend said, laughing. "Maybe she should go back to Africa and build herself a treehouse." Another girl chimed in. "Someone should teach her what happens when you come into our schools. She thinks she's Rosa Parks or something." Laughter, soft, sharp, poison. Ava held her breath. They eventually left. But their words stayed, like cuts that never healed. She left the bathroom, walked to the gym for her last period, and sat on the bleachers. Coach Simmons, a white man with a baseball cap and chewing gum stuck in his teeth, stood in the middle of the gym floor. He pointed at Ava. "You," he barked. "We don't want no distractions today. You'll sit this one out." Ava stood up. "Why?" "Because I said so," he snapped. "Or maybe I should call your daddy again, see if he wants to file another complaint." The students laughed. Brett walked past her, muttering just loud enough for her to hear, "We tried kindness, now we burn." Ava turned sharply. "What did you say?" Brett smiled. "Next time, it won't be your locker. It will be your house." Ava stepped back, her fists clenched. The coach didn't say a word. No one did. The bell rang. She grabbed her bag and left. By the time she reached the parking lot, she saw it. Her father's black SUV. The windshield smashed, all 4 tires slashed, and on the hood, carved deep into the paint with a knife, were the words, "One black monkey down, 1 to go." Ava stood frozen. Her father ran up, eyes wide, hands trembling, not in fear, but in rage. He pulled her close, shielding her with his body, scanning for threats like he was back in a war zone. But this wasn't Iraq. It was America, their home, and they were being hunted. As the sirens screamed in the distance and the red and blue lights painted the sky, Ava looked at the destruction. She turned to her father and whispered, "They don't see me as a person, Daddy." Elijah's voice cracked as he said, "But I do, baby. I always will." And for the first time, she saw it in his eyes. Even soldiers can break. The SUV was gone. The hateful words carved into its hood were gone too, but not from Ava's memory. 1 monkey down, 1 to go. They echoed in her mind like a threat that hadn't finished breathing. And maybe it hadn't. The police came, took notes, asked bland questions, and left with blank stares. No arrests, no investigation, no apology. Just, "We'll look into it." Ava didn't even ask them to try. She already knew the truth. There would be no justice here. Not yet. That night, Elijah sat in the dark, gun by his side, staring through the curtains like he was back on a battlefield. But this battlefield wasn't in Iraq or Afghanistan. It was Willow Springs, a school, a neighborhood, a nation wrapped in a polite smile and a poisonous tongue. And now, the war was personal. "You don't have to go back," Elijah told her the next morning. "I do," Ava said, brushing her braid. "Tight." They want me to disappear. I won't give them that. Elijah nodded, but he didn't smile. He didn't want her to be brave. He wanted her to be safe. But Ava knew. Black girls didn't get to choose between the two. At school, nothing had changed. Brett and Kyle were still there, walking the halls like kings. Their punishment? A few days' suspension that they laughed about in class. One of the teachers even joked, "Careful, or the soldier's daughter might cry again." Everyone laughed. Ava didn't. Her locker had been cleaned, but not by the school. Her father came that night and scrubbed it with his own hands. The noose was gone, but the stain on her soul remained. It stayed in the way people looked at her now, not with curiosity, not even with hatred, with boredom, like her pain was old news, like her trauma had an expiration date. Ava sat alone in the cafeteria again. The table next to her burst into laughter when someone tossed a fried chicken wing onto her tray. Another boy held up a plastic banana, pretending to call her with it. "Hello? Monkey? You lost again?" The lunch staff didn't say a word. Neither did the teachers. The principal hadn't spoken to her since the incident. He passed her in the hallway once and said, "Let's try to focus on healing." Healing? They burned a cross in front of the school. They carved death threats into her father's car. They called her a monkey, a slave, an outsider, and she was the one expected to heal? That night, she went home and stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection stared back, tired but fierce. Her mother's old journal lay on the dresser, pages worn but sacred. She opened it again. My daughter will grow up in a world that doesn't want her to shine. But she will. She'll be loud when they tell her to be quiet. She'll rise when they try to bury her. She'll fight, because silence is surrender. Ava closed the book and wiped her tears. She didn't want to be brave anymore, but she didn't have the luxury of being anything else. The next day, she walked into school wearing a plain black hoodie. On the back, she had written in thick white paint, "I am not your N-word." The silence followed her from the parking lot to the classroom. Eyes widened. Snickers started. Whispers turned into mockery. She wants attention. Here comes the activist. She thinks she's important now. But Ava didn't say a word. In English class, the teacher asked them to write a speech about freedom. When it was Ava's turn, she stood up, unfolded her paper, and looked around the room. "My name is Ava Brooks," she began. "I'm 14 years old. I like books, soccer, and chicken Alfredo. I laugh too hard at cartoons, and I still sleep with the light on sometimes. I'm also black, and because of that, I'm treated like a problem." A few students groaned. The teacher shifted uncomfortably. "I've been called a monkey, a mistake, and a slave. I've had bananas thrown at me. I've been spat on, laughed at, ignored, and threatened. Not once, not twice, every day. In your hallways, in your classrooms, and nobody did anything." She paused, then added softly, "I don't want pity. I want you to see what you've allowed." The room was silent, but not changed. When she sat back down, Kyle muttered under his breath, "You want us to clap now, Rosa?" And the class laughed. Ava stared straight ahead, her fists clenched. Her voice stayed quiet, but her soul roared. Later that day, she found her gym locker broken open, her sneakers soaked in toilet water, a note taped inside. We said, "Leave." She took a picture and showed it to the vice principal. He read it, blinked, then said, "Maybe it's time to think about a transfer, Ava, for your safety." Her hands trembled. She looked him in the eye. "So the racists stay, and I go?" He didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. There was no justice. Not yet. That night, her dad pulled her aside. "They're trying to wear you down, Ava." "They already have," she whispered. "But I'm still standing." And Elijah placed his hand on her shoulder. "Then that's a win." She looked at him, voice steady. "No, a win is when the system breaks, not me." And with that, she picked up her backpack, packed her mother's journal, and wrote one last message across her hoodie in red paint. "If you won't see me as human, I'll make you see me as history." Because she wasn't done, and justice wasn't a moment. It was a fight. The days dragged on like slow poison. Each morning, Ava walked into school with new eyes on her, some wide with disgust, some blank with denial. The whispers were quieter now, but sharper. They didn't throw things at her anymore. They threw silence. It was worse, because now they didn't even bother pretending they cared. One teacher gave her a D on a perfect essay. A student bumped her in the hallway, then blamed her for getting in the way. And a new rumor floated through the halls. Ava lied about everything. She made it all up. She vandalized her own locker. She's trying to make the school look racist. And people believed it, because it was easier than admitting they were part of the problem. But Ava didn't stop. She documented everything. She wrote down every insult, took photos, recorded conversations. She started a blog, the Black Girl's Journal, and shared her truth. Quietly, carefully. Each post was a wound peeled open for the world to see. And people started reading. At first, just a few, then hundreds, then thousands. Then a black student from another town messaged her, "They did the same thing to me, but you gave me courage to speak." Then another, "You're not alone anymore." The posts spread. National news outlets picked it up again. Ava Brooks became more than a name. She became a symbol. But even symbols bleed. One afternoon, she found a paper folded inside her textbook. The handwriting was messy and angry. "You will never belong here. Leave or die." No banana this time, just a death threat. She handed it to the school. They shrugged. "It's probably just a joke," said the new principal, a young white woman with fake concern. Ava's father had enough. That night, he made calls, not just to lawyers, to journalists, to activists, to Washington. He wasn't just a father anymore. He was a soldier on a new mission. The mission? Justice. For his daughter. For her skin. For her silence that turned into fire. And for every black child walking into a classroom afraid to speak. It was coming. They just didn't know it yet. The morning of the town hall meeting, rain poured like the sky itself was grieving. But Ava stood in front of the mirror and braided her hair with her own hands. She didn't want help. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted them to see her. Not as a victim, not as a mistake, but as the storm that had risen from their silence. Her father walked in quietly, dressed in full uniform for the first time since retirement. Delta Force tags gleamed against his chest. He wasn't just showing up as a father now. He was showing up as a weapon. "You ready?" he asked. Ava looked him in the eyes. "I was born ready." The town hall was packed. News cameras lined the walls. Reporters scribbled notes. Parents, black, white, and everything in between, sat shoulder to shoulder, waiting. Principal Howard had returned, seated stiffly beside Brett's parents and the sheriff. His face wore a fake smile, the kind that hides guilt behind years of power. Then Ava took the stage. Not with tears, not with anger, but with truth. "My name is Ava Brooks," she said calmly. "I'm 14. I came to this town thinking I was just a girl, but you taught me I'm a threat. Silence. You called me a monkey. You left nooses. You carved slurs into my father's car. You burned a cross in front of my school and told me to go back to Africa. And the worst part isn't that you did those things. It's that the people in charge let it happen. Gasps. Some parents shifted, uncomfortable. Others looked away. A few cried. She continued, "You told me to be quiet, that it wasn't that serious, that maybe I imagined it. You wanted me to shrink, but I grew. And now the world is watching." She held up a flash drive. Every message, every video, every slur. I saved it. And tonight, I'm submitting it to the Department of Education. This town tried to bury me. But instead, she smiled faintly, you planted me. Then she stepped down. The room erupted in noise, some clapping, some yelling, but the truth had been spoken, and no one could unhear it. The sheriff stood up, red with rage. This is a setup. This is an attack. But Elijah stepped forward, slow and calm. No, this is accountability. He handed the flash drive to the federal investigator sitting in the front row. An hour later, cameras rolled as arrests were made. Brett, Kyle, Mr. Stanley, even the sheriff. The school board resigned within days. Justice wasn't fast, but it had finally arrived. And Ava Brooks, she didn't cry. She walked out of that town hall with her head high, her shoulders square, and her braids glistening in the rain, because she had won. Not just for herself, but for every black child who had ever been told, "You don't belong here." She had proved them all wrong, and the world would never forget her name. The rain had stopped. But the storm Ava started was still moving. 3 weeks after the town hall, Willow Springs was no longer quiet. The local police department was under investigation. The sheriff's badge was gone. The school board had been replaced by a new, diverse group of leaders. One of them, a black mother who stood up and said, "My child will never go through what Ava did." But the town didn't clap for Ava. Not all of it. Some corners stayed cold. Some whispers still curled through grocery aisles. Racism doesn't vanish overnight. It hides, waits, morphs. But now it had been dragged into the light, and it had a name, a face, a voice. Ava Brooks. She walked through the school gates now, and no one dared spit. No one dared throw food. No nooses. No bananas. Just quiet. Respectful or resentful, she didn't care. She'd already won. One afternoon, she walked into her English class and saw something that stopped her. On the board, where once someone had written, "One monkey ruined our school," there was now a quote, big and bold. "They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds." Mr. Rivers, a substitute teacher from another district, smiled at her. A tall black man with a kind face and sharp eyes. "That one's for you," he said. Ava smiled. For the first time in what felt like years, her smile wasn't forced. Later that day, she was invited to speak at a national youth summit. Her blog, The Black Girl's Journal, had reached over 2 million readers. Letters poured in from other black students, from kids in towns just like Willow Springs. Some too scared to speak, others just beginning to find their voice. One said, "You made me brave. I wore my natural hair today for the first time ever." Another read, "They called me names too, but after reading your story, I told my teacher, I stood up. Thank you." Ava cried reading those messages, not because they were sad, but because they were real. Her pain had planted something bigger than she ever imagined. Justice didn't just look like courtrooms and arrests. Justice looked like other black girls standing taller. It looked like little black boys raising their hands without fear. It looked like truth, burning brighter than hate. And at home, Elijah watched it all in quiet awe. His daughter, the little girl who once cried when a teacher said her name wrong, had become a symbol, a voice, a leader. "You proud of me?" Ava asked one night. Elijah pulled her close, voice tight with emotion. "Baby girl, I've led missions into war zones, but you walked into hate with nothing but your skin and your truth, and you came out stronger. I'm not just proud. I'm honored to be your father." She rested her head on his shoulder. For the first time in months, she felt peace. Not because the world had changed, but because she had changed it. Ava Brooks, the girl they tried to silence, the girl they tried to erase, had spoken, had stood, had won, and now her story would live forever, not as a tragedy, but as a triumph. For her people, for justice, for truth. I hope you enjoyed the story. Feel free to share it with your friends and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.